Almost exactly 1 year ago, a coalition of Alberta unions representing thousands of Alberta workers in oil and gas, construction, manufacturing, and industrial maintenance released a blueprint for our provincial economy entitled Skating to Where the Puck is Going. The impetus for both our coalition and the report was the dawning realization that change is coming to our provincial economy, whether we like it or not. As worker leaders and worker advocates, we decided that it's better to prepare for change than to get run over by it. More specifically, we decided that it's better to prepare to seize the many opportunities associated with the rapidly accelerating global energy transition than to bury our heads in the sand and be left behind as the rest of the world moves forward. Our report outlined opportunities in areas like hydrogen, critical minerals, electricity, housing, transportation, building retrofits, agribusiness, and renewable energy. It also offered suggestions about how to secure a future for our oil and gas sector in a decarbonizing world, specifically by helping the sector pivot towards producing feedstocks for materials as opposed to feedstocks for fuels. Perhaps most importantly, we concluded that denial is not a plan and that delay is not in the best interests of the working people that we represent. That's why we are very pleased that this committee is taking a close look at the Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act. In our coalition report, we argued that the only way that we in Alberta can keep up with the scale, scope, and pace of the unfolding global energy transition is for our federal and provincial governments to embrace the notion of government-led industrial policy in the public interest. We said that we need to pivot our economy towards opportunities in the lower carbon economy. We said that we couldn't wait for the market to do it itself. We said that we needed to follow the lessons of former Alberta Premier Peter Lougheed, who used government-led industrial policy to create whole new industries and decades of prosperity when he saw in the 1970s that we were running out of conventional oil and gas. We said that our governments at both the provincial and federal levels have to put their money where their mouth is, because industrial policy only works when it is aggressively funded. And perhaps most importantly, we said that workers need to be at the table when decisions about industrial policy are being made, and that strings needs to be attached to industrial policy funding to make sure that money actually flows to Canadian workers, Canadian businesses, and Canadian communities. With their Inflation Reduction Act, the Biden administration has done all of these things for the American economy and for American workers. The act has now been in place for more than a year, and by every possible measure, it has been an unequivocal success. The IRA has created hundreds of thousands of jobs. It has unleashed hundreds of billions of dollars in investment, and it's setting the American economy up for success in a rapidly changing world. The question for Canadian policymakers is not, should we follow suit? Of course we should. The real question is, how can we up the ante and do even better? The good news from our perspective is that the federal government has gotten the memo. In their last budget, they committed over $80 billion to IRA-style incentives. They have also seen the wisdom of giving workers a seat at the table and tying IRA-style strings to the funding and to make sure that Canadian workers and Canadian communities benefit from the investment. The bad news from our perspective is that conservative politicians, both in Alberta and Ottawa, have at least implicitly rejected the logic of the IRA and are ignoring or dismissing its obvious successes. How else can you explain the UCP Alberta government's decision to impose a moratorium on investments in renewable energy projects, a moratorium that is jeopardizing $33 billion in investments and 22,000 jobs? How else can you explain the reluctance of federal conservatives to even discuss the IRA, let alone acknowledge its obvious accomplishments? I'm here on behalf of Alberta workers today to say that this needs to stop. In the IRA, we have a policy model that works. We need our elected representatives to stop putting politics ahead of the public interest. Thank you very much. I look forward to the discussion.